In September 2022, Hurricane Fiona hit Nova Scotia, almost a Category 3. It left devastating damage around our property with hundreds of trees down, just lots of debris everywhere. We had some roof damage on the cottage that had to get dealt with, but just flattened areas of the woods. And we got off pretty lucky compared to a bunch of other folks. Lots and lots of cleanup, lots of hung up trees, just a mess everywhere. And years later, still cleaning up. But I did find this really nice big oak with a 20-foot section of clear trunk. And that got me thinking about turning some of this windfall down into actual lumber, which resulted in me buying a sawmill from Frontier. Came in 2 boxes. And here I am putting together the rack and the saw head. It went together pretty well. Fairly impressed with the instructions. Lots and lots of bolts, lots of heavy steel. Everything seemed to line up pretty well. And here you can see about the length of the track. Luckily, able to assemble it indoors. So over one weekend, got the sawmill together, and the next weekend was about getting the trailer put together that goes on it. Here's the head going on a track just to make sure everything rolls right. Here's opening up the trailer box. So everything's in there that is needed for the trailer. Lifting up the sawmill to put the rails for the trailer under, and it has 6 jack stands to hold the sawmill in place when you're milling. Get everything set up. Again, it worked out pretty well indoors. And here's the wheels under on leaf springs. The rail stops at the end there. Installing the axles. Has place for fenders to go here that are detachable. Up on the wheels, there's a hitch out the other end. And putting the first saw blade on, anxiously milling the first set of lumber. So turning some of these deadfalls from Fiona a couple years later into 2x, 1x, some bigger cants. And again, it worked really well once we had some help figuring out blade alignment and setup and tension, and also figuring out when a dull blade needs to get changed. Quite a learning experience, but fun. So the first year, we had a little bit of place to store the lumber that we milled inside, and then a bunch of it got tarped under the deck, one of the decks. So this all triggered the need to start building a solar kiln to dry the lumber in. And I used the Virginia Tech, has a nice website on solar kiln and how to use them, how to build them. Here's the pressure treated arriving for the base. Trying to put some joist hangers. This is all 2x10, I think. And just getting the base. So the base is 13 foot 6 by 8. And it's pretty beefy. Lots of material in there. Ended up doubling up all the rim joists and putting proper hangers and brackets in the corners. Pretty much over-engineered, but I figure if I'm going to put a ton of wood in here to dry, it needs to be strong. Nice and straight, which is good. All the fasteners, everything's put together with 3.5-inch R-docks, and then had the Simpson strong tie stuff in there to make it stiffer. Very, very heavy to move around. Here's all the lumber and the polycarbonate arriving for the walls. There's the header to go over the 2 6-foot doors in the front, or on the north side. and starting to fabricate and do the cut list for all the walls inside. So there's a south side knee wall. There's a little wall that goes atop the doors, the two end walls. So just putting all that stuff together. This is where I realized I had the trailer on backwards underneath the mill. So I had to take everything apart again, take the head off, rotate the trailer part, and refasten everything. Not a huge deal, but again, the instructions weren't clear which way things were supposed to be oriented, in my opinion. And here's basically all the material for all the walls is cut. Trying to figure out the angles on the end walls, because the other mistake I made was on the Virginia Tech plans, it's supposed to be 78 inches wide, but when I printed it off, the 7 was cut off, so I made it 8 foot wide. So I had to adjust the end walls to be the proper dimensions. Framing out the doors, lots of extra material for the hinges, because the doors are quite heavy when they're sheathed. There's the end walls framed up, all 2x4. And the platform itself is sheathed with 7/16 pressure treated on the bottom, with 5 4x4s as skids on the bottom. We insulated that and Tyveked it, and we put 3/4 plywood on top of and tuck taped all the seams. Here's the walls getting sheathed. Doors are all sheathed. And there's the doors outside, and starting to bring stuff over to where we're going to put things together. Walls, so there's the 4 walls, the south walls beyond the deck there. Things went together really quick. Probably 10 minutes to get the 3 walls up, another 5 minutes to get the front wall up. Everything went together well. It was pretty rigid once it was up, because everything joined and overlapped right. Quite a bit of fussing around to figure out how to put the polycarbonate roof panel or roof supports in, the rafters. So again, because it deviated from the plans, we had to figure that out kind of on our own. But it ended up working out quite well. Put some blocking in to stiffen up the roof trusses, rafters. You can see how big the header is for the doors there. This is where we realized we probably should have built it in place rather than up here where it was closer to power. Polycarbonate panels going on. And because we deviated from the plans, there's a flat part of the roof, so we just put some polycarbonate there that overlapped the 45-degree south-facing side. And again, that stuff went in really well. There's little gaskets that seal it, so it's reasonably airtight, weathertight. And as we're putting the last polycarbonate on the roof, it starts to rain, so we got a good test of how things were, and it was quite dry. The doors are 6 foot high, so pretty good space to move things in and out. So 12 foot wide, 6 foot high. There's the rain coming. And figuring out how to drag the thing down to where we need it to be on the tractor. So moved pretty well with the tractor. We weren't lifting the whole thing with the tractor, just kind of dragging it. The issue was steering it. So the 4x4 skids in the bottom made it really hard to turn. And once I figured out you just poke the forks into one corner to turn the direction you want, it went really well. So it moved probably 150 yards from up here down into the field, where there was better south-facing sun, and closer where we had piles of lumber to get milled. And just a bit of, again, trial and error trying to turn the thing. Don't really have an estimate of how much it weighs, but it's significant. And this is where we stopped because the things were too muddy in the spring. So because we had leftover insulation for other projects, insulated. We had some roof underlayment, which was black on one side, which is perfect for the inside. Helps with solar gain. We Tyvek'd the outside and tuck taped all the seams. So again, protecting that OSB on the outside. And this stuff that we put in, when it's exposed to 80°C and sunlight, it's like a drum tight on the inside now. We were probably one bag short of insulation, so we did as much as we could here, and did the rest of the insulation later. There's the doors. You can see all the extra beefy material around where the hinges are going to go. Just put the door in place and shimmed the bottom, and then bolted the hinges in. And I think there's 6 or 8 4-inch bolts holding each hinge in, and there's 3 hinges per door. So those are very strong, and the doors swing perfectly. And a good seam around the doors. They close really tightly. You can see the first set of fans installed and running. Pulls in air at the top, goes over the front, warms up, and exhausts through vents lower in the door. Our first 100-watt solar panel installed. Turned out not to be quite enough. And so they're just getting ready to do some more insulation in the doors and the header above the doors. Shows how big those hinges are. It closes up pretty good. Pretty good south-facing location, just on probably 6 or 8 inches of coarse gravel. Starting to insulate above the door and that little wall there. The charge controller for the solar system and the batteries down on the floor. Lots of issues with things getting too hot in there, kind of, I guess, by design, but the electronics didn't like that. So they would overheat and need to get reset. Also had an issue with either melting or burning out the first set of fans I had. They weren't quite built for that, I don't think. But a nice sunny day. Starting to get the first little bit of wood in there now that it's all insulated and taped and sealed. So some of the wood that's going in there is 50% moisture at that point. And milling some more stuff to go in, just to test how long it takes to dry. We had a really warm June and July and August, so things dried really quick. The wood that we milled the previous year was stacked in the kiln as well to dry it even more, which worked out pretty well. Built an insulated box for the charge controller and the battery, try to keep it cooler. That also didn't work. Trying to add more solar to get more power. Ended up getting more panels. Friends had lots of trees down from the hurricanes, so we had probably 300 logs delivered. So lots of milling in my future. And there's milling again recently, and producing 1x6. We're planning on doing the siding and getting that in the kiln stickered to dry with some cants as well. Another 200 watts of solar to go on the ground. A little support for that to keep it off the ground and at the proper angle. All that 1x6 stuff stacked and stickered in the kiln. You see the vents at the doors to allow the air to come out, in from the top, over the front of the stack, through the stack to the back, to exhaust. There's all the solar set up. And we pulled out the 1x6 that we had milled before and just started cutting it to length to make siding, and just overlapped each one by about an inch, and just with brad nails put it in. So we got 90% of it done in basically a morning from a siding point of view. Very satisfying to pull a cant off a pile that's dry, throw it on the mill, make a 1x6 and put it right on the building. Worked out very well. And the other nice thing about the kiln is it kills the bugs. So some of the stuff had been on the ground and had bugs on it, and 50, 60 Celsius kills all the bugs. Getting all the sides done, we pulled the solar panel off the side to do the east side. The battery box got remounted, and just finishing up the siding here. And it makes it a bit tighter as well. When the fans would run, the Tyvek would expand out from the air pressure, and this makes it a bit tighter now. Came out quite nice. And the south or the north wall, little boxes around the air intakes, and again, just finish up that bit of siding. You can do vinyl on the doors just to keep them lighter. Vinyl siding. And cleaning out the kiln and screwing some bunks at the bottom so we can use the forks of the tractor to lift out the kiln dried lumber. Just make it easier to load and unload. A little bit of drip edge across the top of the doors. This is stuff we had left over. And again, milling some more. We filled the kiln again in the last couple of weeks. We used a sprayer to apply the paint and then back rolled the whole thing. So exterior white wood stain. Basically a morning to get that first coat on. Looks quite good and will help preserve the wood as well. So the sprayer was a nice way to get the paint on the wood, and then the back rolling just gave it a nice consistent feel and look. So the next project after this one is going to be, we seem to have lots of dry lumber now, but we don't have a place to store it. So the next step of the project is going to be to build a post and beam storage area, probably around 10 by 20. But the kiln really does its job. It gets stuff down in the 7 to 8% moisture rate. There we're able to mill some beautiful 2x12s from deadfalls from the property. We added the tarp underneath the fans that goes to where the front of the stack is, and that kind of pulls the air from the top, heats it up, moves it to the front, and then the fan at the back of the door sucks it through to remove the moist air at the bottom. We also have temperature probes and controllers, so the fans are programmable to come on at a certain temperature. Intake fans are on one controller and output are on another one, and then we can record temperature and humidity over time. The next project is going to be finding a place or building a place to store all the kiln dried lumber. So it's probably going to be a post and beam framed 20 by 10 foot enclosure, and that's probably going to start as soon as this load is dry. Hope you liked the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Cheers.